Greetings, folks. You join me for yet another motorcycle upgrade. Today we are doing the ThermoBob upgrade. Now this is a special little part for a KLR. I think it's supposed to sound like Thingmabob, similar to the doohickey that's also in this bike. Kind of funny. But yeah, these KLRs, they tend to run very cold on the road. I think that, you know, on a trail in a forest or something, they probably would run as they're supposed to, but on the highway, these bikes do not have a radiator bypass, which a lot of bikes do, a lot of cars do, even older cars, but these KLRs are very cheap, so they do not have a radiator bypass. And what that means is that as you're going down the road, a lot of air will get into the radiator and it will cool off the coolant that is inside of it. And if there is too much air going through the radiator, that coolant will be cooled off too much. And as I said, that happens a lot on the road. Happens when you're going 45, 50 or more. So a guy on the internet designed a radiator bypass for the KLR, and I will be installing it today. And it's gonna be going right there. That is the hose for the coolant going into the engine. It's gonna go right there. Now, this is a somewhat strange video. I'm also doing a coolant flush at the same time. It's in a separate video that you can find on my channel right next to this video, I'm sure. So I'm kind of out of sorts right now. I don't really know. I'm a little bit out of order. So I've done most of the coolant flush already. I've got the water and vinegar into the bike and warmed it up, and right now I'm just waiting for it to cool all the way down before I drain the water and vinegar and get the bike ready for some new coolant. So if you are doing this job and you don't want to do a coolant flush at the same time, you can probably follow the same steps that I'm going to take in this video, and it should be about the same. Just thinking that you've already got, that you'll be draining coolant rather than water and vinegar like I'll be doing. So yeah, I think, because I'll be draining this water and vinegar and I'll be pouring it into like a little plastic bottle just to get out of the way. I think if you're going to be reusing your coolant, which you can do, also I'm not a mechanic, so don't take my advice, but you can reuse your coolant. I would drain it out into a basin and then just keep it over to the side until you're done with the ThermoBob, and then just fill it back up. But I'm flushing, so, and I'm doing another video with it, so it's just a little out of order. Let me walk through the tools for this job. It's a very simple job as far as tools go. It's a little involved as far as like cutting stuff and getting stuff right, so slightly difficult, but pretty simple as far as tools and everything go. Let's go over them. So this is pretty much everything. This is the ThermoBob kit that I got on eaglemike.com. I will link it in the description along with the hoses. And I'll give a link to these crush washers too. I like to put a new crush washer in whenever I play with a bolt that has one in this little drain bolt. It's got an old crush washer, so I'm gonna put a new one on. I'll link those. Yeah, so we've got our ThermoBob housing here. We've got the thermostat, and we've got the little L joint that goes off of the radiator hose. Got some hose clamps. Got a hose that comes with the ThermoBob kit. We've got these new coolant hoses that I bought on Amazon. And then we've also got this little paper here. Instruction manual for your ThermoBob 2 can be found at www.wattman.com under the installation manuals tab. There's no bleed hole in that T-stat anymore, just in case you're watching someone's YouTube video and they mention it. I've not visited this website, and I may not. I am just like that. I've got 2 reference videos that I'm watching. I'll put links to those in the description as well. One of them is Rocky Mountain ATV, I think. It's a good video. Oh, one of them's Tim Two Wheels. I love Tim Two Wheels videos. It's very descriptive. But next we got our tools. We've just got a Phillips head, an 8mm wrench, and an 8mm socket and a ratchet. I've also got some shop towels and a parts tray. Those are all the parts for my coolant flush. Okay, so I think we got to start by taking the side panels off, the seat off, and the tank off. They will require, the tank's going to require 10mm socket, so that's another thing to add to that. I also took this skid plate off. Oh, that's nice, we got some light. Took the skid plate off for the coolant flush, and I got it jacked up. It's not really necessary, but I like to have my bike jacked up when I'm doing these jobs. Trying to think. Oh yeah, the skid plate takes 10 mils, so. Yep, I'm gonna take all this stuff off, and then we will get to the ThermoBob. So real quick, just wanted to mention that I've got a inch-pound torque wrench for this job. The bolt's holding the ThermoBob on, and the bolt holding the drain plug in, or the drain plug. They both get torqued to 65 inch-pounds, just so you know. Got my side panels and my seat off. For the tank, these are the 10 mils, and we're just connecting this hose, and we're turning the fuel off, and then there's this hose, and then a hose right here that will be disconnected. It's gotten a bit dark, so I've taken to wearing one of these little light things. It's crazy how good cameras have gotten. I mean, I'm just being lit up by a street light right now. It's amazing. Excuse me. Excuse me. Anyway, my bike has almost cooled down to the touch. Still a little bit hot, but there's just a little bit to go. Next, we're going to be draining it using, let's shed some light on here. Going to be draining you would be draining coolant. I'm going to be draining water and vinegar out through this drain plug here, and we're going to be putting on a new crush washer. Now, this one is going to be about a 6x12x1 crush washer. It's good to get in the habit of putting a new one on every time you remove a bolt that has a crush washer. So that's what we're going to be doing. Yeah, we're going to be draining that, and then I will be removing all of my hoses so that I can put some new hoses on. I forgot if I mentioned that, but I'm going to be putting some new shiny hoses on here. And so I'm going to remove all my hoses. And then there is a special thing that you do with the hose coming off of the radiator. That is where the bypass is going to come from. So yeah, I'm going to take off all the hoses, and then I'm going to look at my new hoses and make the cut, and then, well, I'll show you what's going on with that. I'm a little too far out over my skis right now. Let's go a little bit at a time. Okay, I've got my coolant drained. Going to replace this drain bolt, and it's going to be torqued to 65 inch-pounds. Next, I will be removing all the hoses. I'll be doing that with these Phillips head screws right here. There's 2 more connections up the radiator, and then there's this one as well that'll be taken off. And I'm going to leave this thermostat little cover thing on here for now. So I just got all the hoses off and all their respective hose clamps. This is on there still. I think next I'm going to take this, and I'll take this little joint right here, and that is going right about here. Now I don't know the exact measurement. There is a picture on the reference video, on Tim Two Wheels reference video that I'm watching, so you can pop over there for the exact measurement, but it's about here. So I'm gonna pop over there, double check that, and then I will be making a cut with a box cutter. Just a normal box cutter. I forgot to mention this in the tools. I'll be making a cut there, and then I will be putting this in, and it has to be angled right, and both sides of the hose need to be angled right after it's attached. And I will be attaching it with a couple of these hose clamps. I don't know which one yet, but I'll show you the results. So I did actually have to go look at that Wattman website for some instructions, because the reference video that I'm using from Tim Two Wheels is on a Gen 2, and this is a Gen 1, and these hoses are just slightly different. So I made a couple little score marks where I'm going to be cutting, right there and there. They're 5/8 inches apart, and there's some pretty exact measurements on Wattman's website. I didn't do totally exact, I just looked at the picture and did something similar. So I made a couple score marks. I'm going to take that box cutter right there, and I'm going to go all the way around. I'm going to throw that attachment in, get the hose clamps down on it, and then we will work on getting all of our hoses, all our new hoses, back on the bike. So this is how I cut my tube, and that is how I positioned this little elbow. I think it's going to be pointing that way, and it's going to be off of this one, and the tube is going to go over the exhaust header onto there. So that's sort of positioned in a way to allow my hose to go over the header. So yeah, I'm going to now put back all of my hoses, I think, and then we'll see how it looks. It was a bit tough figuring out which one of those hoses went where and getting them over the attachments and getting the hose clamps down. That was very tough. They were very stiff hoses, but we got them all on. They all look nice and shiny. It's gonna make my bike look just a little bit better. I want to do something about this rust here. I heard that baking soda and water works good for rust. I may try doing that soon. Next up, though, we will be taking this hose here, this thermostat here, this O-ring here, and this ThermoBob here, and we are going to be putting the hose right here off of this little joint. That'll come up and go right here where the ThermoBob will be. We're gonna be taking out these 3 8mm bolts, and we will be putting the thermostat inside the ThermoBob. This O-ring will go in the little cutout in the engine block itself, and we've got various hose clamps. I think these are bolts that will go through the ThermoBob, and then we got a little Allen wrench for these bolts. Yeah, I'm not totally sure how this thermostat goes in. I know that the instructions right here said there is no bleed hole. So I won't have to worry about a bleed hole. I think Tim Two Wheels video did have a bleed hole to deal with, but I'm going to stop recording, figure out how to do this, and get back to you. I just installed one side of my hose. I put those two small hose clamps on either side and fitted that side over that little L joint, and I put it over the little barbs on the joint itself. Then I went ahead and took out those 3 8mm bolts, and we got the hose off. Now this is the factory thermostat. Let's take it out. That's the factory thermostat. And what we will be doing with our ThermoBob is we'll be taking this O-ring and putting it in that hole right there. And that might fall out, so we'll just keep it down here for now. We're taking our ThermoBob and our new thermostat, and we're putting it in with the words on top and this little groove. And since this does not have a bleed hole, it does not matter which way it goes in, I do not think. I'll double check the website and make sure I'm right about that. That's how that goes in. And then we will be taking these 3 long bolts and this Allen key, and we will be installing the ThermoBob just like that, so that this joint is facing the right way for this hose. And then this hose right here is going to connect to this joint right here. The clamp will go down around it, and then we will be putting those long bolts in right there, and they're all getting torqued down to 65 inch-pounds. That is not feet-pounds, that's inch-pounds. And that may be most of the job done. The only piece remaining being the gauge. The bit for the gauge that has the exact numbers for the temperature, which I may or may not do. I think I will, because I got a good end there anyway. My blinker indicator light has not been working, even though my blinkers have been, so I just did a full LED swap on this, and I may have fucked something up, so we'll check that out. And then one of my gauge lights doesn't seem to be on, so I'm gonna turn it around in the housing and see if that fixes it. But let's deal with this right here, and then we'll move on. And there it is. I've got the hose connected to the ThermoBob, and I tried to get this one pushed down a little more. I think it can go all the way down to that little edge right there, but it was just at too bad an angle. And then I've got all these bolts torqued, or not torqued down, but tightened down, basically finger tight. There is some complications with my torque wrench where it's got a 1/4 inch connector, and I do not have any 1/4 inch to 3/8 adapters that I can put a hex tip on. So I'm just gonna tighten those down a little bit. They're all supposed to be tightened down to 65 inch-pounds. I'm just gonna tighten them down a little bit, and that should be fine. So yeah, that's that. This hose was a little bit close to my exhaust. That's why I wanted to get it pushed down a little bit more over there. It might bring this away from the header a little bit. Whatever. Do I do my instrument panel? What time is it? I think it's 8:30-ish. If it's like past 8:30, I'm not gonna, I probably will just do it. I'm just gonna do it, yeah. I think for this, I will be needing to take out a Phillips screw here, and there are 2 8mm nuts down there. And then we'll be taking this speedometer cable thing off too. And then the dashboard should pop up. Let's see. I just found out what the problem was with my blinker. So I did an all LED upgrade, and I needed a diode running from my blinker, and it needed to be grounded. So I grounded it and my grip heaters, and I would guess they're not working either. I grounded both of them to that top nut right up there, and I'm guessing that when I turned one time while I was out, it snapped both of those ground cables. So I'm gonna need to find a better place for both of those. That's a job for a different day though. I'm going to get this cover off. I don't exactly know how yet, and then I will place that little numbered gauge right in there, put it back on, get this filled with coolant, and then I think that will be the end of the job. Let's see. Okay, I just realized that in order to get the top off of this Gen 1 dash, there is a tiny, can I get some light on it? Tiny little screw right in there. And I do not have a Phillips head that is small enough. Actually, I might. Do I have one in here? Would that work? I'm gonna try a couple of these. If none of them work, I'm going to move on and fill up my bike with coolant and see how this works. It is almost 10 p.m. I've been out here a long time, but we got the ThermoBob done, we got the hoses done, we got the dashboard put back on. I have not yet filled up the coolant, but I think this is where my two videos converge. So this one will be playing both in my ThermoBob video and my coolant flush video. And so coolant flush people, you will disregard this, but we will be putting the tank, the seat, and the side covers back on next, I think. And then we will be placing the bolts back in our coolant reservoir. So we've got four, one of them's already in there, 4 bolts, 8mm, one there, one back there, 2 down at the bottom. And then we'll be putting our cover back on, our reservoir cover, after we won't put the cover back on because we'll fill it with some coolant. But yeah, we'll get the 4 bolts on, we'll get all our stuff back on, and then we will fill up the bike with our new coolant, wherever it is. And if you are doing the ThermoBob and you did not do a coolant flush, you would put the old coolant back in next. So let's keep going. Let's get all this stuff back on here. Okay, we got it all back together. Also for the coolant flush people, I forgot to mention that I drained that water and vinegar that was in the system, and after I let it run for 10-15 minutes and get all the way up to temperature. And I think that's all that you guys missed as far as you're concerned. I think next we're putting in our coolant. Now to do this, we will be taking off our radiator cap. Make sure that the engine is cold all the way when you do. Otherwise it can either burn you, or it's so pressurized that steam will like explode up the top when you open it. Kawasaki says that 1.3 to 1.4 quarts go in here. I don't know how exact that is, but we will be filling it up all the way to the brim of the radiator and then letting it all go through the system. We'll be filling up the reservoir also, I think probably to like halfway between both of the marks. And then we'll just be letting all that drain through. Then we'll be running the bike for about 10 minutes, letting all of it drain through, checking it again to make sure that the level is still good. If it's too low, we'll add more, rinse and repeat until it is holding a good level. So let's do that. I'm just filling this right now, but I forgot to mention that this is pre-diluted coolant. So it's already a 50-50 mix of coolant and water. If you buy undiluted coolant, make sure to mix it 50-50 with water first. You can also do different ratios as far as that goes. If you're in a hotter climate, you can do more water than coolant. Water is a better cooler than coolant, surprisingly. This is pretty much just antifreeze coolant is. So it stops the coolant from freezing, and the coolant is the water. Anyway, I'm going to break open that second bottle and then make sure we get this to the brim. Okay, that is filled to the brim, and this reservoir is filled just about halfway. I'm going to replace the radiator cap and the reservoir cap sitting right over there. And I forgot a step, so after I drained all the vinegar and water out of here, I should have poured more distilled water through the system and just let that sort of drain through to get any vinegar out of the system. I forgot that step though, so I don't know how important that was, especially given the fact that we took all the hoses out and everything, and so it was, any vinegar would just sort of be little remnants in the engine. I don't know, it should be fine. I've got enough coolant to drain all this. If it's not, I might look it up after I get done with this, but I'm just going to leave it as is for now. I got the coolant in there. I'm going to replace the caps, and then we will run the bike for about 10 minutes and then recheck our levels after it cools off. And if it is not up to the brim at the radiator, I will refill. I will just top off the radiator. I'm having trouble talking today. I've been out here a long time. I've been out here 5 hours almost now. So let's get this done. And that is a finished bike. Let it cool down, took the radiator cap off, and it is topped off completely. Reservoir. Yep, that's right in the middle. Right on the money. Okay, that's the job done. Let's see if I can get a good look at these new hoses. It's not going to look good in this lighting, but piece by piece, this bike is coming back together. Okay, last couple things. Both the cover and the skid plate. Oh, I forgot to mention that ThermoBob was working nicely, I guess. I didn't notice it, I didn't notice the bike heat up too much faster, but maybe it'll hold heat better when I'm on the road. Let's see. It is almost 11 o'clock. I think I started around 4:30, no, around 5:30 or 6. So, out here for 5 hours again. Not totally unexpected, but still kind of annoying. Thank you for watching. If you watched, please like, please subscribe, please leave a comment, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye, friends. Bye bye.